are live at the Winnipeg Free Press News Cafe here at 237 McDermott. For those of you joining us live at the winnipegfreepress.com, thank you for watching. Today we have a very special guest with us, author Andrew Wilson. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
And you brought your book with you, which is formally launching on Sunday here in Winnipeg. It's called A Fiery Soul, The Life and Theatrical Times of John Hirsch, of course, local legendary theater director. So please tell us, how did this book come to be?
How did it come to be? It began with another book called Open Your Hearts by my co-author, Freddie Martz. And that was about the Holocaust orphans who came to Canada in 1947. Canada very generously allowed 1,000 of them in, and Hirsch was one of them. Freddie wrote this book about them. It was published in 1995-96. I did some editing on it. And Freddie wasn't finished with the subject, and she continued to research Hirsch, and this went on for many years. The publisher was beginning to wonder if there was ever going to be a book. I was getting involved. I was doing some interviews, and I was doing some research in London, in England, where I live, in the British Library there. And it just sort of evolved, and eventually I became co-author. So there are two of us rather than just one of us in the book.
So were you simply assisting her with some research, and then you just kind of were in so deep that it ended up being a co-venture?
Yeah. I was writing bits and pieces and doing, I've edited Freddie for a long time, so it worked out surprisingly well.
Now there will be an excerpt of the book in Saturday's Winnipeg Free Press in the FYI section. I got a look at it and it was very entertaining, and it really took you back in time to the 1950s when coffee was 10 cents, and there was a very interesting restaurant called Child's Restaurant here at the corner of Portage and Main. So how did you create that time warp?
The flavor of the place really comes from interviews, and there were wonderful people to talk to. Tom Hendry was the guy who talked about Child's perhaps most eloquently. Hendry was Hirsch's co-creator of the Manitoba Theatre Centre, of course. But there were lots of people from that time. It was a time when people wrote letters, so there are a lot of letters, a lot of things in the National Archives, for instance, things that people pulled out of trunks, in their attics. It was a lot of material, and it gives it that richness.
Now you live in England, and
Yep.
Your co-author Freddie, she lives in BC.
Yep.
And so how was that
and
logistically?
our publisher's in Montreal, just to make it really easy.
So how did that all work out then?
It worked out through Skype. Skype really helped. And Skype, the internet, travel, we both put in time at the National Archives. Freddie did most of the Winnipeg research, interviewing people here, and 2 or 3 sets of archives here. So it was an international effort. It was quite fun.
So in the excerpt at the restaurant, it was sort of a hub for artistic and intellectuals and the who's who really of Winnipeg. Half a century ago, it's just sort of casually mentions Margaret Lawrence and actor Douglas Rain. So what was it like to sort of be writing a story about these people that so many people are familiar with?
It's partly scary because when there are people who know who were there and you weren't, you're thinking, oh, if I get any of this wrong, people are going to jump all over me. But once you get past that, it's really just fun, and it's storytelling, and one story leads to another. Things from the time. Just staying in the Fort Garry Hotel is a trip for me because it's 30 years since I've been in Winnipeg, and last time I was here I hitchhiked in, so a bit different now. But there's a story from the Fort Garry Hotel when in 1963 Tyrone Guthrie, Sir Tyrone Guthrie, who established the Stratford Festival, came to Winnipeg. He was brought to Winnipeg by Hirsch and Hendry to address an annual general meeting of the Manitoba Theatre Centre. And they had a nefarious reason for this, actually. But anyway, Sir Tyrone Guthrie is at the Fort Garry Hotel. Hirsch goes down to pick him up. So, you go past that wonderful marble and brass and wood and all this. Hirsch goes up the elevator, knocks on the door, and it's opened by 6'5" of theatrical knight wearing nothing at all. "Come in, dear boy. Come in, dear boy." Well, Tyrone Guthrie was a character. He liked to go about in what was known as a state of more than gypsy undress. And Hirsch got some clothes on him and took him downstairs, folded him into his Austin Mini, and took him to the AGM of the Manitoba Theatre Centre, where Tyrone Guthrie schmoozed the board of the MTC, because they'd run a deficit that year, and Guthrie was there to say, "Deficit, schmeficits," or however you would say that if you were a theatrical knight. So the important thing is to do theatre and to do good theatre, and for that we need public support, and a matter of a deficit, well, really, no, keep it up. You're doing wonderful stuff here. Hirsch knew exactly what he was doing, and so every inch of Winnipeg really is sort of full of Hirsch stories. You don't have to look very far.
So what did surprise you about this story, about what you learned?
What surprised?
What surprised you?
I didn't really fully appreciate how big a deal Hirsch was in North America. I knew Hirsch not from the theater stuff, but from growing up with CBC television. There was a Three Musketeers that was done on CBC TV in '68. It had, I think, Canada's first on-screen fart, because it was sort of a rollicking body type thing, and it was a hoot. And I remember that. I was 11 or 12, so it stuck with me. And then in the '70s, I remember some great television programs, the Tar Sands, actually any number of things, Side Street and King of Kensington. So I knew Hirsch from television. I didn't realize, though, that he was really important at the Lincoln Center, I should say, in New York. He directed at the Beaumont Theater in Lincoln Center many, many times, and he did the best things that they did there for several years. He directed Anthony Hopkins. No, that wasn't in New York. He directed Anthony Hopkins in Los Angeles. So, I mean, he was a player. He was a serious player in the North American theater world. I really didn't know that when I started. I thought, important Canadian guy. He's a lot bigger than that.
And so how has the theater world received the book so far?
Well, how has the theater world received the book? I think there's a certain amount of buzz, but in a way, it's over 20 years now since Hirsch died, and there was sort of things went quiet, and part of the reason we really wanted to write the book is we didn't want people to forget just what a big deal he was, what an important part of Canadian culture he was, and as you probably know, that there's more Hirsch stuff happening. There's Alon Nashman's one-man show that he and Paul Thompson of Theatre Press Marais put together. So there's Hirsch stuff, there's Hirsch momentum for some reason, starting with our book and continuing with that one-man play.
The official Winnipeg launch is this Sunday at MTC's Tom Hendry Theatre between 5:30 and 7:30. What is your plan after that with the book and going forward?
With the book? Oh, I have no idea. One hopes people will like it and buy it and tell their friends, and more people will buy it and so on. And otherwise, I'm in the middle of a translation at the moment and doing some more work. I'm a technical writer, among other things. So, life goes on.
All right, we did have one comment that came in through Twitter. It was from London Fringe, and they were just curious if we were going to talk about Alan Nashman's upcoming show about Mr. Hirsch at Stratford.
Yeah, Alon is, he's going to do an excerpt at the launch on Sunday evening. But yeah, but he and Paul Thompson put together this one-man show, and I've seen some of it in rehearsal at Stratford. In one of the rooms, actually, that Hirsch, rehearsal hall that was created at the time that Hirsch was there as the artistic director at Stratford. And again, that has that sort of resonance. Same thing with the Fort Garry Hotel. These places, you feel him, and it's going to be really quite a wonderful play. And that's a one-man show that's going to be at the Stratford Festival this summer.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming in today. Of course, you can
Pleasure.
read the excerpt of Fiery Soul, The Life and Theatrical Times of John Hirsch in Saturday's Winnipeg Free Press in the FYI section. Be sure not to miss that. So, Andrew Wilson, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you. Pleasure.